So today, identify yourself with what you want. It's the title of the talk today. We see a world in which individuals rediscover their personal power to create an individual life that works within a life that works for everyone. We're rediscovering our personal power. So how perfect. Identify yourself with what you want. And across the listserv, across Facebook, many of you may have seen the letter that Dr. Ken Gordon wrote on the Brussels terrorist attack. If you haven't heard about it, I'm going to just share a bit of the letter with you in reflecting our talk title today. He begins, of course, to honor all of those who were perished or wounded as a result of the attacks. There were several bombings in Brussels, Belgium. And most importantly, though, what he does after giving us a moment to grieve for those people is he turns our attention to reminding us about this teaching. And he says, regardless of conditions that we find ourselves in, our faith remains strong. Because our spiritual principles are clear, these principles do not change or waver when one thing seems more difficult than another. They remain true and steadfast, even when things do not appear to get better. Centers for Spiritual Living has one thing to offer the world at a time like this, a profound faith. That infinite spirit is unfolding, evolving, and expressing as all of creation, all of the time. The universe hasn't changed, and spirit hasn't abandoned us. Rather, human beings have manifested destruction out of ignorance and fear. In such times as these, we must turn our attention, intention, and actions toward the desire, vision for a world that works for everyone. Rather than to succumbing to fear, hatred, and violence, let us be the very consciousness of love, light, and peace that lifts and raises consciousness as a whole. We are actively participating in creating a world that works for everyone. This is a powerful and all-encompassing vision, but one that is within our reach when we turn to our best selves. Not someone else's best self, our best selves. I know that turning to our best selves is a tall order at times like these, but what else is there to do? What else has a chance of being effective? Dr. Ernest Holmes says, cease weeping over the mistakes of yesterday and steadfastly holding the face of the great and divine reality, walk in that light wherein there is no darkness. Dr. Ken concludes, Ernest Holmes reminds us to rise above our past, above the current circumstances, and envision a future that is filled with infinite possibility, healing energy, unifying love. There truly is one thing happening, and that one thing brings wholeness to all that we experience in our lives. We can trust this one thing, and we do so now. Blessings, Dr. Ken. And so our theme is identify yourself with what you want. And I'm so grateful for his constant reminders. You know, a friend on Facebook posted something also as I was searching and looking for all the different things, reflecting on the events that happened this past week in Belgium. And it was atheist Stephen Fry's response to the question what he would say if he met God at the pearly gates. It was rather depressing, actually. And, you know, it's so interesting because it's so far removed from our philosophy. And this has kind of crossed my paths a couple of times in the recent past, where I listen to someone talk and I'm like, wow, they are so off the mark from what I believe. You know, they're so off the mark, not just atheists, but other people of different kinds of faiths are so off the mark from what I believe, what science of mind teaches, what New Thought teaches, what metaphysics teaches, what Kriya Yoga teaches, or any other truth teaching at the deepest level. Because what he was sharing was that he talked about this capricious God who is the maker of suffering. And I thought, well, you're missing us in this equation. That we're not victims to something that's going, I accuse you and you're going to suffer and this baby's going to die and blah. Like that is just so not what I hold as truth about this infinite reality. So what I believe and what I know is that it's so different than that I'm immersed in an opportunity, in a possibility, and it's mine to use. Right? The title of the talk, Identify Yourself with What You Want. Ernest Holmes says, it is, however, an outstanding truth that every privilege brings its corresponding responsibility. The right and power to make your own decisions, bad or good, puts you in the very vital position. You now realize you are no longer an automation moved about by caprice of circumstance, solely guided by instincts, or subject to some superimposed will upon you. You are free to choose, but you have to take the consequences of that choosing. You shall have and do have whatever you recognize and accept as yours. Period. So I remember when I was a student with Dr. Cannon, and he used to say, when you read the newspaper and you see all these disasters and horrible things that are happening, he says, and you are creating that. And I would be so mad. What? I'm not creating that. And what he did is he helped clarify by saying, if you can conceive it, then you can see it. I brought a poster that was shared in class by one of the students. It says, we do not see things the way they are. We see things the way we are. Did you get that? Not the way they are, the way we are. I can see only what I know and what I believe to be true. I am not victim to what's happening to me. I am in control and empowered by what I create in my world, by my own thinking and the own stance that I take. When I realized that I had the power to create a different way of being, when I first came to Centers for Spiritual Living, that it's not easy, that it takes real great effort, real focused energy. That's the whole thing about will. I use my will to focus my energy on truth. Not to make things happen. I use my will to keep clarity of thought, to keep focused on the divine, to keep centered in the light, to see the love in each and every person. That's what I use my will for. And then I allow the will of truth to move through me, creating a life that works for everyone. That's mine to do. And so on the day that I discovered that I had the power to create a different way of being, that my thoughts were the foundation of my experience, was the day that I was set free. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried. I don't know about you, but it was the most profound message I had ever received. And it is why these teachings, these new thought teachings, these spiritual principles, and why, for me, Centers for Spiritual Living will always hold dear to my heart, because it opened me to that idea that I am free to choose the life that works for me. And that with this infinite presence, I am creating my own experience. I was on fire with desire and determined to help other people see that same truth. Have that same light ignited within them, knowing that they could also create the life that works for them. Science of Mind teaches we're both called to and responsible for creating our life. We're called to it. It pulls us. We work with the law of cause and effect to create a life and a world we really want. Life doesn't happen to us. It happens through us. And you don't need to take my word for it. Practice it. Try it out for yourself. It's like, we're not here discovering new things, new technology. We look at our who was it? Somebody I think in class, or maybe it was one of the parents was saying, "Isn't this the most amazing thing?" Or maybe it was class. Like what this thing can do. This is the phone. What this thing can do, really. Before, a computer was the size of this room, and it couldn't do a portion of what this can do. And yet this possibility existed This technology existed 2,000 years ago. But you say, well, it couldn't have. They didn't have them 2,000 years ago. Well, the possibility existed. Somebody had to envision it and guess for it to be possible. You know, if we think about it, if we even take this, I was sharing in class, my aunt and uncle, they were about 92 years old, and I was showing them Skyping on my computer, and I was Skyping with my sister or something, and they actually ran out of the room and were hiding behind the wall. They were afraid of this moving picture, which was my real sister, and that we were talking in real time. It freaked them out. So 90 years ago, you know, the whole concept of even radio and telephones was fairly new, let alone moving, real-time, visualizing. Ernest Holmes says that the only reason that we use cars and airplanes to get from point A and to point B is because we haven't fully encompassed the truth that we can just envision ourselves there and we will be there. That's possible. That's what's next, people. The only thing that holds us from that is a disbelief of that possibility. And when someone truly believes it, like the airplane, when the Marx Brothers truly believed it, everyone thought they were idiots. You can't fly a plane. But they believed it, and they held fast to it until they were flying an airplane. Someday, somebody will show us the truth, that we don't even need the planes. I was discussing with another friend a book about the autobiography of a yogi, and she shared with me that she found it really boring. She took it on holiday with her, and she said, I'm going to read this book. You know, everybody's read this book. It's a really great spiritual book. I'm going to read this book. And she said it was the most boring read ever. And I'm like, really? Oh my gosh, it's the best book I've ever read. And I was going on. She's like, are you crazy? And the book is about Paramahansa Yogananda's passion to live a spiritual life. And I guess why it inspires me is I hang off his every word, because he is like a spiritual geek, a spiritual rebel. He skips school so that he can pray more. Like, holy cow. I love that concept, because I'm a rebel. And I'm happy to skip out so that I can pray more or meditate more or be more connected to the truth. Like, I get that. To me, that is the most empowering thing that I could do, is to spend more time in that reality that there is just one power. And whatever it takes for me to do that, I'll escape and do it. Do my work. Because I know when I do my work, I create a world for myself that is love-filled and joy-filled, and then it affects other people. And then they have an experience of more love and joy. So, how do we know what is okay to create for ourselves, though? How do we know that we aren't hurting somebody by our own desires? Ernest Holmes, Thomas Troward, all the great writers say anything that supports a greater expression of life is good and worthy of our creative focus. I know that a lot of times what happens with this teaching is there's a turning from giving and doing to inward giving and doing. And some people point a finger and say, wow, you know, it's a really selfish philosophy. That, you know, the focus is self-care which is opposed to them care. You know what I mean? Anybody ever been caught up in them care and switched the switch and started self-care, and all those people that you looked after before are kind of ticked off that you're not doing it anymore? But the source of their good is not me. And I asked for Blake. He ran in with a billboard of a post that an affirmation I had written for myself, because it was so important for me to remember that with my children, thinking that I was going to rescue them and save them from their own mistakes, desperately wanting to save them. So I wrote myself a quote or an affirmation, and it says, there is a power for good working in and through the life of every single person. I am not that power. God is. I am not that power. I have to allow each and every person in my life to have that same spiritual opportunity. I can't fix it for them. The biggest gift that I can give someone is to allow them to develop their own connection by getting out of the way and let them have their experience of life. And it's tough. Jason, I don't know whether to thank you or to curse you for recommending the book, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. I'm halfway through this darn book. It's a good book. But depressing. Oh, it's painfully depressing. It is about a man named Harold who is hopeless. And he discovers, long story short, he goes out on this walk about to this woman who's dying of cancer. And he's determined, some garage girl told him that if he had faith that this woman with cancer will live. Oh my gosh, so it's about his walk and all the things that he's thinking while he's walking, and I have never met such a depressing person in my life. In fact, I think I avoid it on purpose, because if we want to create something good in our lives, let's surround ourselves with goodness, right? And have you ever had people show up in your life and you're like, oh, they are so hard to be around? Well, Harold is hard to be around. And his wife, Marjorie, isn't any better. They are the worst example of a joy-filled life that I can ever imagine. Harold lived in a dead-end job. 20 years ago, he and his wife stopped sleeping and speaking to each other, except to, you want jam with your toast. And she's just as miserable as he is. She just locked herself away in this marriage and stopped living. It's so depressing. But what's happening throughout this book is the truth of spirit. It can't help itself. I haven't got to the end. I'm desperately hoping it has a good ending. The truth of spirit is awakening with poor Harold and Marjorie. That somewhere there is that within Harold that has sent him on this 500-mile walk. And regardless of the blisters on his feet and the infection in his leg and the pain that he's suffering, the guy's never walked a day in his life. Regardless of all the challenges, he is determined in faith to make it to this woman that she might have a healing. And as he walks forward in that, he reviews his life and awakens within himself truth, unfolding the reality of who he is and who his relationship with his son and his wife could have been and might yet be. It's the principle of the universe unfolding in spite of himself. And now that his wife has been abandoned for 12 days, she spent the first 7 or 12 like this, awakening within her is possibility. I can look after the bills. I can go out and have fun. I can create my own life, and I'm not reliant on Harold. How many people do we know, if not ourselves, get stuck in that place of negativity that drags us into a world that doesn't work for anybody? And then we point our fingers at all the horrible things and we go, look, see? I have siblings who call me up and convince me, they try, that they want to die sooner or later because this place is horrible and it's going out the window. And I'm like, sucks to be you. Because that's not what I see and how I have to identify myself with what I want. And any time somebody tries to immerse me in negativity, those closest to me can attest to this. I can only take it so long, and I turn my back to it and I say, your reality, not mine. That in my reality there is one power, and it is good. In my reality, people do get along and love each other and support each other and are here for each other. In my reality, there is an awakening happening everywhere, no matter what the outside appearances look like. That destruction often happens before the rebirth. We know this. We watch it every winter. Driving around in the springtime, and you see everything's kind of mucky and dirty looking at first. When the snow, if you go up to Mount Washington right now, when they've plowed the roads and it's all kind of gooey black on the side, on top of the snow. We know this. We know what happens if you leave it alone and allow the truth to expand. Growth happens. Flowers bud. birds sing. I was in the forest yesterday and last night actually, right around dusk, and maybe somebody here knows, but there was this like sounds. And I thought maybe they were birds, but then as I cycled along, I came across a couple of deer, and I wonder if that's the sound deer make. Is it? Oh, the forest was full of it last night. It was amazing. So incredible. And then this morning, walking, I had my head down as I was getting my things gathered as I walked out of the house. And then I had to stop because on the sidewalk right in front of me was another deer that looked at me and was like, "What are you doing out here this early?" And jumped over a fence, and then there was two of them. They sat there and watched me as I walked by. Like, that's brilliant. Edwin Gaines is a Unity minister. Anybody know who she is?
Yes.
She's lovely. I highly recommend you look up any of her YouTube videos and listen to it. She talks about when she first learned these principles, and she was just flat broke. And she was ready to do her first big demonstration, and her teacher told her, well, write down everything on a piece of paper that you want to experience in your life. And she had like trip to Mexico and money and all this stuff she wrote down on this piece of paper. And she even went so far as she went down to even though she was broke, she went down to the travel agency and she booked her trip to Mexico. But she came back and told her teachers, "Oh, well, no big deal, I can always cancel." And the teacher went, "Well, that's not expansive thinking. What are you talking about? Like, you need to start over." So what she did, though, is one of the places where she lived in lack was grocery shopping. And so she decided this one day, instead of buying the thing that was affordable, that she was going to experience buying a luxurious item at the grocery store. So she found these almond stuffed olives and bought them. And she called up her friend Lana, and she said, "Lana, I got the almond stuffed olives. You've got the bottle of wine in the pool. I'm coming over, and we're doing Mexico at your poolside. And we're going to drink that wine out of your crystal glasses, and we're going to dream of all the places that we're going to visit that day." And so they did. They got together, and they had a little Mexico vacation beside her friend's poolside. And thus is the beginning, the seed of an idea. She lived the reality. Instead of thinking, "I can't go to Mexico," she brought Mexico to her. I identify and create what I want through my own eyes. We just have to shift it. It's there already. How many people travel to the West Coast to have this amazing West Coast BC experience from all over the world? How many of us remember to have that West Coast experience every day? How dare we not if we don't? We're living in paradise. Yes, it rains because we live in a beautiful forest. But I'm speaking to the choir. You guys know all this stuff. I want you to remember where you are feeling like you're holding back, and think about that. Where are you holding back? And what is one step you can take toward living the life you've always wanted to live? Hold fast to that vision of the truth for yourself. Immerse yourself in meditation and prayer, focusing on divinity and truth. And watch it expand. So affirm with me, believe with me if you will, that there is just one power. There just is one life, and it is good. Knowing this, I know that it is impossible to escape, for it is everywhere present. Therefore, it is me, it is my life. It is the thoughts I think. I have within me the power to create the life that works for me. For I am immersed in this intelligence that awaits my direction. And I choose life. I choose joy. I choose happiness. Knowing that my power is thought impressed upon the law of this intelligence, that it is designed by nature to respond back effortlessly and perfectly, directing an experience through me that is perfect and right, and mirror image of that which I desire. I trust this, and I know it to be true. So I hold my desire to the highest ideal possible. I feed it. I nurture it. I experience it. I am it. And I am so grateful. So grateful for the spiritual teachings in all spiritual truths that support this reality, magnifying it in my experienced reality. I'm so grateful for my strength of will to choose a life that works for me. I'm so grateful for love everywhere present and for eyes that see that love. And so in gratitude for a law that is always unfolding in this perfection, in gratitude for these words that are power, the moment they are released, I confidently surrender. I let go, knowing all is well, all is good. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you and bless you.